Evolution of the human eye.
When undergoing this lab, our goal was to determine why humans have developed eyes that are sensitive to the visible spectrum, specifically the 400 to 700 nanometer range. There are animals other than humans that have eyes that are sensitive to ultraviolet or infrared regions of the electromagnetic spectrum, so why don't we?
A light source was fixed in place at one end of the light bench with a holder for the colored filters fixed some distance to the right. A fiber optic cable attached to a spectrometer was fixed in place at the other end of the light bench, facing in towards the light source. Prior to experimentation, it was expected that only the wavelengths corresponding with the color of the filter would be able to pass through and reach the spectrometer. All other wavelengths would be absorbed by the colored filter.
Each diagram below is how the color spectrum is affected by a specific type of tinted lens. When a blue lens was held up, light of wavelengths 490 through 510 nanometers passed through it to the spectrometer. The green lens transmitted wavelengths of 530 to 600 nanometers, and the red lens transmitted wavelengths of 650 through 700. Each lens also let through a lot of infrared light. Next, we decided to see what kind of light that all these lenses would let through. Because only light that the lenses shared in common with what they let through was infrared, altogether these lenses only let through infrared. When we decided to test out the sunglasses and to see what light they transmitted, we tried out two different sunglasses and saw similar results in both. The sunglasses let in less of the smaller wavelengths and gradually more of the longer wavelengths of light. When wearing them, it was difficult to see bluish colors, but it was easier to see redder colors. More expensive sunglasses are made with higher quality and are able to only filter out UV rays and let in blue colors through.
Using our information that we saw in the first part of the lab, we began to explore why we only see the light spectrum of 400 to 700 nanometers. To answer this question, we will have to look at the sun, water, and the evolution of our species.
The graph to the right is showing the emission spectrum from the sun. The x-axis is the wavelengths emitted and the y-axis is the flux or intensity of the light. As you can see from the graph, the 400 through 700 nanometer range has the highest emission from the sun. Infrared and UV light are also in abundance, so this is life on Earth has developed the ability to see within all three of these spectrums. However, the UV light is significantly less intense compared to the visible and infrared light. But why do humans only see visible light and not infrared?
The displayed graph represents the absorption spectrum of water. Using the absorption coefficient 0.01 over centimeters as the arbitrary cutoff for what is absorbed versus what is transmitted, one can see that wavelengths outside the range of 200 to 800 nanometers are absorbed by water. Within this range, it is clear to see that wavelengths near 400 nanometers are absorbed the least. In class, the following light spectra were obtained. The first spectrum was collected directly from a white light produced by a light box. As you can see, white light is actually composed of wavelengths that encompass nearly the entire visible spectrum. The two spectra on the right were then obtained by shining the same white light through a tank of water across its width and length. A similar spectrum is that obtained directly from white light through air was seen through the water. The difference lies in that the peak is shifted slightly to the left. This accounts for the difficulty one has in seeing reds and oranges underwater, as these wavelengths are absorbed. Additionally, infrared wavelengths emitted by the white light are absorbed an even greater amount by water. This is represented by the marked decrease in intensity of infrared wavelengths after passing the white light through the water tank. Intensity was smallest through the full length of the tank since light had to travel a greater distance through a denser medium than air. Note the graph through length appears to have a higher intensity than that through width due to readjustment of scales.
The evolutionary lineage of humans started out with organisms that lived in water. The cnidarians, which include jellyfish and anemones, were an early phylogenetic group that had the beginnings of very simple eyes called ocelli. These are light-sensitive spots that can detect movement but do not form a clear image. As time went on, these eye spots developed and diversified into the variety of eyes that we see in today's organisms, including the highly specialized eyes of humans. At sea level, the solar spectrum contains minimal ultraviolet wavelengths, but a small amount of infrared wavelengths. As light enters water, most of the infrared wavelengths are absorbed, which aligns with what we saw in our trials. Of the wavelengths in the visible color spectrum, the longer wavelengths, such as red and orange, are absorbed by water as depth increases, and therefore visibility of these colors in water is decreased. Blue and violet wavelengths, which are shorter and therefore absorbed less in water as depth increases, are easily seen. This behavior of light and water led to the narrow range of visible wavelengths on the electromagnetic spectrum for human eyes.